Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
The Bears.
Because of the way they play the nickel corner here, and the nickel corner plays 88-85% of the snaps. He's got to be like part linebacker.
The Bears.
When you're in a scouting room, there's going to be differences of opinion.
The Bears.
Once coaches get involved, of course, they've got their own opinions about what fits best for what they want to do, and that could be drastically different than what the scouts say.
Well, you're looking at traits, and number one, he tested very, very well.
The Bears.
One thing good about Kevin, he's been with two other organizations, as well as being the commissioner of the Big Ten. He's been around.
The Bears.
With Greg Olson, Jerry didn't want to get rid of him. I didn't want to get rid of him. Nobody wanted to get rid of him. One guy wanted to get rid of him, Mike Martz, because Mike Martz didn't know what the hell to do with him. We tried to talk Lovey out of hiring Mike Martz for a month and a half. He's playing zone, but number one, he doesn't get enough depth with the drop. But who the hell's giving? How many times does a 305, 310-pound defensive tackle drop into coverage, especially in a key situation?
The Bears.
Greg, why are teams wrong on quarterback evaluation so often?
Number one, it's a hard position to evaluate. There's probably not as many real good quarterback evaluators as there needs to be.
The Bears. The Bears. The Bears.
Welcome, everyone, to a fresh edition of Gabriel Talks Football, GTF. My name is Aldo Gandia. It is Monday, July 22nd. We got a lot to talk about because we had a weekend full of practices at Hallis Hall and comments by players and coaches. So let's get to it right away. Let me welcome in the man of the hour. His name is Greg Gabriel. Greg, how are you, my friend?
I'm wonderful. How about you?
I'm wonderful, too. I feel great. I went to therapy. I feel loose and ready to take on the world. You and I have
physical therapy. You know, some people take therapy as a therapist, and they work down their head. But
I've had that before, but not currently. You and I have the same problem in our lumbar area where there's that kind of pinching feeling, and you want to crack it.
It's brutal.
Yeah. You've been to a chiropractor before?
Oh, yeah, there's one right around the corner. My wife goes about 3 times a week. I haven't been in probably 6 months, and I need to go.
Hey, Swifty gave us a compliment on a new open. What is the schedule for you and Swifty to do your show together? I understand it's like a couple times a month or something like that?
Yeah, like every other Friday. So we did one Friday. It looks like the next one. I just sent him a text a couple minutes ago. The day after the Hall of Fame game, I think, is the next one. So
Excellent.
that'll be a good day to do a show because we can cover the game, talk about the game, and go from there. And then, you know, as long as we're brought up Hall of Fame game, you know, the more I think about it, there's some people who think, you know, they're not going to put Caleb in it. I don't think that's a chance of a snowball in hell of him not playing.
Yeah.
And the reason being is, number one, it's a nationally televised game. He's the first pick in the draft. The league's going to want him in there. Number two, there's going to be a lot of Bears people there. There's 3 former Bears going into the Hall of Fame. And then the third reason, Hard Knocks.
Mm-hmm. So because of Hard Knocks, you think he'll at least get a series? I think
he'll play a series or two. And why you got to get the guy reps? I mean, why not?
Yeah, I understand that. That was part of the discussion this weekend when coaches and players met with the media. We'll go through that. But first of all, while we're on the subject of Caleb Williams, you were a little perturbed by some of the tweets you saw coming out. People, you know, already raising alarms or sounding the alarms because of Caleb missed a pass here or there. What was that all about?
Hey, my God. It's his second practice or his third practice. And there are people saying, well, he threw an interception in the red zone drill. Who the fuck cares?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know how many he's going to throw in preseason in practice? a lot. That's how you learn. Then there was somebody else who tweeted, well, he threw a lot of checkdowns. So what?
Yeah.
Exactly. I remember the Bills, this was when I was a young scout, and even before I got into scouting. Bills in Cleveland used to have a rookie scrimmage 1 week into camp. And it was at Edinburgh State, which was midway between where the Browns camp was and the Bills camp was. So you go in there and you'd watch it, and 80% of the damn passes were checkdowns. Because that's the safe throw to make.
Right.
And the idea is to, and Shane Waldron basically said it too, the idea is to get yardage. So you don't get into third and long. You don't have to press the ball downfield. If you get 3, 4, 5 yards on a play, good. That's good play. It's positive play. But Caleb is going through learning process right now. And he needs all the reps he can get. He's going to make mistakes. And you learn from those mistakes. When you you throw a pick, you see on tape then, when you go back and you're reviewing the tape, why he threw the pick. Could have been a great play by the defender. Could have been a bad throw by him. Could have been a bad route by the receiver. All sorts of different reasons could go into it. But you're going to find out exactly why when you're reviewing the tape. And if it's on him, he's going to know why, and he's going to learn from it. And then you'd hope that he's smart enough and intuitive enough so that the next time he sees that type of situation, he doesn't throw that ball.
Yep. Yeah, it's about seeing what can make at the NFL level, and so it's trial and error. It's also Shane Waldron was talking about this. Is they're looking at all of the players and what they're successful at and what they're not successful at, so that they can integrate that into their play calling during the season.
Well, also it figures into what personnel groups they're going to use when.
Yeah.
Play the guys to their strong points. Well, if so-and-so is good, such and such a player is good, and you have him in the game at that time.
Right. Makes sense. You're frozen, but I can still hear you perfectly, and that's the main thing.
You're not
now
frozen,
you're back. So we're
okay.
incompatible.
Now you're unfrozen. Okay, let's next show. Let's do the theme music from the cartoon Frozen, and then we'll be in good shape.
There you go. All right, another topic you wanted to talk about was the defensive end position. Apparently, Emmanuel Ogbah is going. I think what is it, Miami or somewhere? And so,
he's working out. In fact, Ngakwe's there today too. They're both.
Oh,
there.
Really?
Yes. And so, Shaq Barrett retires over the weekend. That was a surprise. And they've got like 3 guys on PUP, 3 edge players. And their 2 best are on PUP. So they're thin. So I figured one of those guys would be going down there. They're familiar with Ogbah. He played there the last 2 years. Did not play up to the level of his contract, so they let him go in the spring. But, there's really only 2 guys out there, Ogbah and Ngakwe, that are worth a damn. Now, I don't know if the Miami defense is really a fit for Ngakwe's game. Ogbah is more of a fit, but they got them both down there because they're obviously the 2 best guys out on the street. By the end of the day, one of them is probably going to be signed. Maybe both, but I doubt both.
Yeah, Friday when Poles and Eberflus met with the media, Poles was very cagey when I think it was Patrick Finley who said your defensive end problem. And he says, I don't look at it as a defensive end problem. We're currently evaluating the play at the defensive end position. Basically what he was trying to say, I'm not going to push a panic button. My style of being a general manager is to take it easy. If they go into this season with DeMarcus Walker as the starting defensive end opposite Montez Sweat, should we be concerned?
I would, because you don't have a legitimate pass rusher opposite Sweat with Walker. Not saying Walker's not a good football player, and he's a good player in the rotation, but history shows that the best production he had as a sacker was 2 years ago. He had 7 sacks at Tennessee. Most of those sacks, go back and look at the tape, came from inside, not outside.
Mm-hmm.
And, from outside, he's never had a high number of sacks. Now, Austin Booker could turn out to be a pretty good football player, but he's raw. He's really only played one real season of college football, redshirted in 2021 and 2022. He got a little more than a handful of snaps. He might have had 6 or 7 tackles on the year, but he, no real production. He wasn't in the rotation. Then last year, he leaves Minnesota, transfers to Kansas, plays almost 600 snaps, has 8.5 or 9 sacks, and turned into a legitimate football player. I remember, I've said this a number of times, Daniel Jeremiah said when the Bears took him that it was a surprise that he came out, and it was for people I know that are close to the Kansas program. They thought in December he was coming back. But DJ said that had he stayed in school, he could be a possible first next year, at least a second. And, he said that right after the Bears took him. So the guy's got talent. The guy's got upside. But is he ready to show that this year? That remains to be seen. There's no question he's a hard worker. Looking at him on college tape, he needed to get a little bulkier and a little stronger. He's got that wiry type frame. He could get a lot stronger and not get a lot bigger because of the frame he has. He's got kind of a narrow frame, narrow hips, and he's very, very long, real long legs, long arms. So, he may never get bigger than, say, 255, which is fine as long as he's strong enough. But he's got really quick hands. You can see it in some of the drill work too. But then it's, you got to have 4 edges in this defense because you're playing a rotation. Okay, Walker's 1, Booker's 1, Sweat's obviously the guy, but who's going to be really the number 1 guy? Okay, you signed Jake Martin, who played with the Colts last year. And Jake Martin is an athlete, no question. He ran 4.58 when he came out, but when he came out, his numbers coming out were 6'2", 236 pounds. Okay, he played about 245, 248 last year for the Indianapolis Colts. His best year ever was 2021. So that's 2 years, actually 3 seasons ago, 2 full seasons ago. He played in Houston for Lovey. So he played in this scheme, played the rotation. I didn't look at the percentage of plays he had, but he had his highest amount of tackles. It was only 20. That was the highest sack total he's had in his career. He's had a total of 3.5 or 4 sacks the last 2 seasons. Last year in Indianapolis, he only played 19% of the defensive snaps, or 16% of the defensive snaps. So it's not like he was a full-time player. He's been with 6 teams in 7 years. His rookie year was 2018. So what's that tell you? He's a journeyman. He's a journeyman. He's got talent. But you can't say that all of a sudden he's going to come out of nowhere and have a career year and put up 9 or 10 sacks. Shit like that just doesn't happen in the National Football League.
Yeah, indeed. Judon Dexter's name was very popular this weekend among the interviewees, and I can't wait to see what this guy looks like physically, because the way Montez Sweat described him, he looks like an Adonis, chiseled. And CJ Williams says, I asked last week, but makes more sense this week. Is it possible Dexter is playing outside more this season? Rotate him inside on passing downs, and on early downs, he's outside. I think that's an intriguing possibility. What do you think?
Okay. Yeah, I get it. And I get the question. But now you're going to put him in a position. You're really weakening 2 positions, not 1.
Okay.
He's supposed to be the number 1 3 technique. They drafted him for that. And he's worked to get his body in position to be that dominant 3 technique. So you're going to put him outside where he's never really played a few snaps last year. But, he played the 2-gap scheme at Florida, so it's a new position. And then who's going to be your 3? Now, obviously, Pickens could do it because Pickens is the other guy who could play that position. But is there a drop-off between Gervon Dexter and Pickens? So my question is, why weaken two positions to make that move? That doesn't make sense to me.
It's always been, it seems like it's always an issue with the Chicago Bears about, moving a guy into a position to fill a hole, and you lose the opportunity to really develop. If you're going to move Dexter outside, you're going to lose the opportunity of really truly developing a spectacular 3-tech by having him play in such a versatile way. Have you noticed, Greg, since your time, in the NFL in the 80s and 90s and aughts, that versatility has become more important to NFL teams?
Yeah, you play first of all, you play rotations a lot more than ever used to, especially along the defensive line. The offensive line, they don't ever want to play a rotation, but the defensive line you want to, because you want to keep 4 fresh guys, and if you got a 3-man front, 3 fresh guys. So you need depth. You got to have quality depth. You got to have at least 7. You can rotate three of the defensive tackles and 4 defensive ends. Defensive ends are doing a lot of running around. They get tired easily. So you want to have them. You want your best guys fresh in the fourth quarter, especially in a close game. So, it's best to have a solid rotation. And I just think, I said it to one person today, I get what Poles is trying to do. He said the same thing last year. It's like, we basically want to see what we got here before we go out and make a move. Okay, that's fine. And that is sound thinking. But when there are so few out in the street to be able to do work, to be able to come in and play, are you putting yourself in a position that when the music stops, there's no chair? Yeah. And there's nobody out there. So then people say, well, they can make a trade. Well, who's available on a trade? Well, Judon. Well, who said Judon's available? Why are the New England Patriots going to trade Judon? Who's their best defensive player?
Yeah,
there's a whole lot of questions. And then on top of that, I think I may be wrong. I think Judon's in the last year of his contract. So you get him for 1 year, and then he's a free agent, or you got to pay him. And, of course, he wants to get paid what Sweat's getting paid. And he's like 2 or 3 years older than Sweat is. So do you do that? So there's a lot of unanswered questions when you put yourself in a situation like that.
Indeed. Kay wanted to know, since Miami cut Agba, can they re-sign him? Can they sign him back? Yeah. Isn't that a simple thing that happens all the time? Yeah. And
they could have re-signed him to a lesser contract 15 minutes after they cut him.
Yeah, and that's usually why. Indeed. Okay, I want to switch our conversation to sort of the main theme that I thought we could talk about today, because I've always been interested in leadership.
Before we do that, there's one guy we left out, and that was
I'm sorry,
the defensive end Robinson.
Dominique
be in the mix. He was a 4th-round pick in Poles' first draft. Starts out, goes lights out in the first game, gets a sack and a half. I think he's had 1 sack since.
Mm-hmm.
And the last part of last year, he wasn't even dressing. So my opinion, and I may be way off, is that he's on the outside looking in. You haven't heard his name by anybody in the first couple days. You didn't really hear his name during the off-season program, OTAs, mini camp, etc. So, he's a guy that, in my opinion, has really got to jump out in the preseason, make himself be noticed to even have a chance, and get into the mix.
What do you think a guy like Eric Washington, who is known for being very proficient at developing pass rushers and defensive linemen, do you think that he can come here and assess what is wrong with Dominique Robinson? Because he has all the athleticism to play that position at a high level. Maybe it's just unlocking something in his mind, or a technique thing, or whatever. What do you think about that?
It's a good question. Number one, I know Eric. I've worked with Eric here in Chicago. His first NFL job was here. Came from Northwestern. He's a good coach. He's a quality person. Very good defensive line coach. So you really got a defensive coordinator that when you're in individual drills and stuff like that, he's working with the defensive line with the Travis Smith. So I think you got two good people working, and it's another set of eyes and another way of teaching that, could look at Robinson and say, let's try this or let's try that. And yeah, maybe that will help. But, I look at it as part of it is, I only played like 1.5 years at defensive end in college. This guy was a quarterback and a wide receiver, not a defensive lineman. So he comes in, you drafted him on traits, and he had a decent week at the Senior Bowl. But since that opening game, he hadn't done anything. And so, we say a lot. You want to see a young player keep climbing the mountain. He's going to hit a plateau, but after he spends a little time at that plateau area, you want to see him start climbing again. Well, he hit a plateau early on, never started climbing again. And if anything, he's regressed. So you don't want to totally count him off, but he's got to really make plays literally every day to make himself be noticed to not just the coaching staff, but the front office.
Do you think that strength was an issue with Dominique Robinson, as Scottish Bear suggests?
Could have been as a rookie, but then he had that full off season.
Right.
And, he came back a little bit bigger last year. He looked good. I don't know what his max lifts are or what he was doing in the weight room, but you see him being able to – you see him flash things, set the edge, hold the point. You never see him get blown off the line of scrimmage. He just doesn't make any plays. Yeah. And the quick twitch that you think he should have being a former receiver, we haven't seen that since like that first game. We didn't see it even in the preseason games last year. So, like I said, he may have hit that plateau, and that's it. He's hit a ceiling. I'd love to see him come on. That'd be great for the Bears, but I think it's a wait and see.
Yeah,
Badass or wait and hope that it happens.
Yeah, wait and pray. Badass suggests that perhaps Robinson lacks the football IQ and has trouble learning. Now, he has jumped from position to position to position. This will be, I think, his fourth year playing the position.
Yes, fourth full year.
Fourth full year. So hopefully something will click, because he certainly has the athleticism that has captured people's imagination. Scottish Bear suggests that because New England is going through a rebuild, Greg, perhaps Judon will be traded for draft assets. What do you think?
Well, that's what fans like to think when they want a certain player.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, they're in rebuild. They're going to trade him. He's also there. They got a coach who's been there. He's not a new coach. He played there and he's coached there. Basically, he's been there his whole career, coaching and playing. And he knows Judon is the best player they got on the defense. So, and he coached on the defensive side of the ball. So why is he going to want to get rid of his best player? And on top of that, I don't have his age right in front of me. You can probably look it up. I think he's 30 years old now.
I think he's 30 or 31. Yeah, let me look it up.
So and he's coming out of contract. That means he's going to be looking to hit the home run next year. And you're already paying sweat. People don't think about some of these things, and you can't pay everybody. That's why it's better to have a young guy, or you can get a mid-price veteran that can do well enough until and then go from there. So I can't see something like that happening. If you could get a guy for a mid-rounder that's been a rotational player and you think can put up more production, that to me is, and I don't have the slightest idea who that could possibly be, but that to me could be the better choice than somebody like the New England player, like Judon.
Yeah. Earlier, Flex Diggs offered this opinion: keep Yannick Ngakoue away from this team. He'd rather see young guys battle it out. We aren't winning a Super Bowl this year. If no one emerges in next year's draft, you got 3 picks in the top 60, then that's when you go after that position player.
Okay, and I'll answer that this way. You got a coach with a gun to his head. At least in the mind of the fans and the media, he's got a gun to his head. I don't think he does in the eyes of the Bears front office. But if you want to have, they want to improve the interior pass rush, and hopefully Gervon Dexter can do that. And you got the Sweat on one side. If you want Sweat to be a double-digit sack guy again, you've got to have somebody on the other side that can pressure, because otherwise every team's going to go in there, going to take Sweat right out of the game. They're just going to double him up and take away his efficiency. And the other guy is going to be left to his own accord to do anything. And if he doesn't have the talent to do it, he's not going to get it. You got to have balance. Right. And I don't agree. Hey, you've heard the players say it. It's time to win. We got talent. It's time to win, but you got to have the players. And I'll go back to free agency. We got to get an edge. They never signed one. Why didn't they sign one? Because the frickin' money was out of this world. It was like what Sweat got and then some.
Right.
Okay. So then you're looking at the draft. They could have done it. They could have traded out of 9 and done it, but they had, by all accounts, it sounds like Rome Odunze was a top 2 or 3 player on their board. You can't say no to that. You got to take the player. And it obviously helps the offense. So then there wasn't really, when they're picking again, really when they picked Amagaji in the 3rd round, and then they took the punter in the 4th round, the players on the board at that position didn't change that much. Because it wasn't a deep draft for edge players. Yeah. So, they very easily could have pulled the trigger on Booker in the 4th round. They could have pulled the trigger on him in the 3rd round. But the way it worked out, he was still available, probably because he only had, he's a 1-year wonder, for lack of a better term. And so they got him. I had a 3rd round grade on him myself. I know other people did too, but it's the way the whole draft fell, and there were some really productive guys that went in that 5th round, and actually after Booker went. Mo Camaro went in that area, who's a pretty darn good player, but he was only 6'1". There's a kid from Washington State that went in that area. I think a few picks after Booker. Jackson, he was a pretty good player. So it just, teams weren't taking edges in this particular draft because I think they were unsure of the talent level.
Yeah. The Scottish points out that Judon has a $6.5 million base salary for this season. If he plays that out, then he'll hit free agency in March. And I think that's
he's going to want to hit a home run.
Right. And I think the issue is that Judon is unhappy because he wants a contract extension now. He wants that security now.
He's also said that he will play on that contract this year. He's been quoted in the past few weeks as saying, "Hey, I'm good."
But if he is traded to a team and that team doesn't work towards negotiating a contract extension, I don't think he'll be happy. Yes, he'll play for that 6.5 this year, but he wants the assurance that it'll be $8 million next year or whatever.
$8 million. Shit, he wants what everybody else is getting. 20.
Yeah, that ain't gonna happen.
Here's what he wants, Aldo. He wants what happened to Sweat. Okay, trade me at the trade deadline. Yeah. And then he helps the team, but he becomes a rental unless that team has got the money he wants. Because if they don't give him the money he wants, he's walking.
Indeed. Good stuff. By the way, before we get to that topic about leadership that I want to delve into, the offensive center position was a note of discussion during the weekend. On the first day, we saw Bates get all the first team reps, and then on the second day, it was Shelton. And I think it was the guy from The Score, Chris Emma, that asked, at what point does the competition for the center position stop and you start focusing in on continuity between the center and the offensive lineman? I thought that was a fabulous question because, of course, you want to settle on your 5 starters as quickly as possible so they build on that continuity. What say you about that? There's something changed in the NFL that you can wait till the week before the NFL season starts before settling in?
They're going to want to go through a couple games with who they assume is going to be the starters. So, and you got to think in the third game, the starters aren't, or the fourth game, they play 4 this year, the starters aren't going to play that much, if at all. Last year, they didn't. So, I would think maybe after the Hall of Fame game, you want it done. So then you got game 2 and game 3 to work with your assumed starters, assume there's no injuries.
Mm-hmm. And there was another question. I think this was from Courtney Cox. She asked, what about Caleb Williams? Does he have input over who his center should be?
Yeah,
what are your thoughts?
Waldron said he's got to worry about himself.
That's right.
There'll be a time down the road, and he didn't mean this year.
Yeah,
he might have some input. Caleb's got to worry about Caleb right now, and not about who's getting the ball back to him.
Mm-hmm.
If he was a 10-year vet, that'd be a different story.
Right. Have you, in your experience with the league, seen quarterbacks who prefer to have a particular center? I mean, in baseball, we've seen it a lot. A pitcher is traded and his catcher will come along in the trade at the pitcher's insistence. But in football, is that center quarterback combination tandem that important?
I'm going to no. And I mean, yes, it's important. Have I seen it? No. When I was in New York, so I spent 17 years in New York, we had 2 centers. Bart Oates, who was a damn good center, and then Brian Williams was a first-round pick out of Minnesota. I came here, who'd we have? Olin Krooks the whole time I was here. I've been blessed with playing with good centers. When I was working for Buffalo, early on, as a part-time basis, they had Kent Hull, who was also an excellent center. So all the teams I worked with, and I worked for Philly for the 1 year as a consultant, and they had Kelsey. I don't think I've been around a bad one yet.
By the way, somebody pointed out that I might have said Courtney Cox. It's Courtney Cronin, of course. I apologize if I misstated her name. Okay. Chris says, Aldo, can we tune in live to the presser from here so we don't have to switch over? Oh, the Bears are having a press conference now during our show? How dare they?
Wait a minute. They usually don't start until after. They had practice at 10, didn't they? Or did they start at 9?
Yeah. I to be honest with you, I'm not sure. So let me see if we can pop in there real quick.
Well, who's going to be talking? Because it's probably going to be Eric Washington today because he hasn't talked yet.
Yeah. And there's nobody at the podium right now. So if something big happens, somebody let us know. We'll cut in there. All right. So let's move over to the topic of leadership because Matt Eberflus on Saturday said this about leading from the front. That seems to be a new mantra for this season. Let's listen to him describe what that means, and then we'll have a discussion. A couple of other players talked about leadership as well that I want to share with you and the audience. But let's start with Eberflus's definition of leading from the front.
Really, the three things that I talked to the guys about that when leading from the front is, first of all, you got to be able to perform at an elite level. So leading from the front, if you're the head chef, guess what? You got to know how to cook, right? You got to be able to perform and do your job, at an elite level. So that's number one. The second thing is to be able to compete. We want people that are alpha in terms of the competing. Alpha in your room, alpha in the league, and let's go compete at the highest level. And the last thing is be a great teammate. You have to be able to do a lot of things to be a great teammate. You have your private conversations where you're encouraging somebody, or maybe you're challenging them, and maybe it's in front of everybody sometimes. You got to be able to ebb and flow and have the instincts to be a great leader. So really, those are the three things we talked about.
For specific guys to do that, or is that kind of a...
No, I am looking for specific guys. And I have conversations with each one of those guys. And I have conversations with the guys that are emerging leaders too. I'll bring them in my office. We'll talk. And we'll talk about what that means for where you are right now. And then, because you're always in the development phase as a coach. You're developing, obviously, the skill sets and all those things and the fundamentals and knowing the scheme and all that. But more importantly, you got to lead from the inside out. If our team's going to be strong, it's got to be strong from the inside out. And then you got to develop those guys that are just coming in, the young guys, as leaders as well.
Now,
Greg, is this not anything new?
No, you always want to have leadership, and everything he said is true. There's different ways to lead. You got guys, in fact, let me go back to how we look for leaders when you're scouting. You're watching the player, so you watch how he interacts with the other players on the team when you're at practice. And even if you go to a game, you're watching how he interacts on the bench with the other players, what he's like on the field during the course of a game. But you're also talking to the coaches. And there's two types of leaders. There's vocal leaders and there's leaders by example. And there's some that are both, that are, and I've been around some really good ones. And I've said it 1,000 times, Olin Kreutz is the best. Olin led by example and vocally. Okay, in New York, we had a bunch of good leaders. Carl Banks was one. Carl Banks was more early in his career, was more of an example leader because of his work ethic, how he practiced. Then as he got older, more secure in the league, then he became more vocal. Phil Simms was very vocal. Bart Oates was a vocal leader along the offensive line. Here, we had on the offensive line alone, Reuben Brown and the whole interior. Garza, Reuben Brown, and Olin were all very good leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when Moose Muhammad was here, so wide receiver, he was a very good leader with that wide receiver group. Thomas Jones was an example leader in the running back room. Didn't say a whole lot, but his work ethic told it all. So I get exactly where Flus is coming from, and you've got to have some that are a combination of the two, some that are more vocal, and some that are example. And you need a leader in every single group. But then you need your team guys too, and hopefully, and it's got to be an alpha guy, and that's what Olin was. Brian Urlacher early was an example type guy. Later on, he became more and more vocal. Lance Briggs was more vocal right from the start, but we had guys, along the Alex Brown became vocal. As he got, it's hard for a rookie to come in and play. I got to say this about Caleb. Caleb's got some natural leadership to him. Nothing seems to be too big for him. So he's not afraid to speak his mind. At least it seems that way. And he's going to feel comfortable doing it. So, but, like, who is the leader along the offensive line? And that's really one of the most important positions to do it. And if you go by experience, Nate Davis has the most experience, but we had all the issues with him last year, most of them personal. How about this too? Speaking of Nate Davis, he practiced 2 days in a row and people are applauding. Yeah, this is this year. That was that year. And I mentioned last week on the show, his position coach from Tennessee is the assistant line coach here. There is a connection.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So then, Braxton could be being, it's now his third year in the league. I don't see Tevin as a leader. He may be. I just don't see it. Bates is. I know that now in Buffalo. I don't know much about Coleman Shelton to say that. And, the other tackle's in his Wright is in his second year. Is he ready to do that? So the offensive line, they brought in a couple of vets. Maybe it's got to be some of those veteran backups that they brought in. Have got to take on that leadership role in that particular room. Cole Kmet, I think, is becoming a pretty good overall leader of the offense.
Mm-hmm.
And Keenan Allen and DJ are excellent right now. DJ more of the example type, and Keenan can be vocal and example.
Yeah. I was talking to someone over at Bears on Tap, and they said that one of the things of value that Tevin Jenkins brings is that the offensive line has become meaner and plays in that style that Tevin plays. He likes to bury people to the ground in the run game, and that is an example of leading through example. Kevin Byard, the veteran safety who was playing his first year with the Chicago Bears, was asked for an example of leadership.
Every training camp's a little different. For me, it's all about routine. Try to stick to the same routine every day. Go to sleep at the same time. Wake up at the same time. Eat the same food. I want everything to feel the same. It's a lot about meetings, pre-practice, warm up, everything. So, because I think a lot of that is injury prevention, all those type of things, and also just being a leader by example. I want some of the young guys to see how I prepare, how I do things, make sure I'm getting my conditioning in, staying after and getting extra work after practice. Like I said, I think for any successful person, they will always tell you routine is the best thing to try to do.
Greg, I love that because so many young players don't immediately embrace nutrition and training. It's after a couple of years in the league. So if the young players on this team are following Kevin Byard's example, they're getting off to a head start in terms of preparing their bodies for a 17-game regular season and hopefully playoff games. That to me is huge, that nutrition leadership part. Now, every team has a nutritionist, but, the players have to buy in.
I think most, if not all, have one now.
Right.
But I know one thing, I know some of the strength and fitness people here. I've worked with them under Rusty before. Jimmy Arthur is excellent. They are huge on the nutrition aspect. And from the day a rookie walks in the door for rookie minicamp after the draft, that nutrition part is pushed on them day after day after day. They eat 2 meals a day at Hallis Hall. That's not, grab a lot of bacon and pancakes. That's eating the right stuff. And they're like limited in what they can eat. They try to keep the heavy fat foods away from them, have them eat a strong, nutritious diet that's going to give them energy, help build muscle and not put on fat. It's like, they're not going to have a rack of donuts over in the corner of the cafeteria for guys. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah. It's funny because the NFL Players Association has their annual survey, and they asked players questions like, about the facilities and things like that. And the Bears actually were somewhere in the middle regarding menu choices and food. And what I learned is that some of the players were complaining that there weren't donuts and that it was all nutritious stuff. And so that's why they gave the Bears a bad grade. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, well, and that is part of the strength staff, the nutrition staff. It's part, you're trying to make your players better, and that's part of it. I think I told you a story, and it was a while ago. So it's Rusty Jones' first year here. Now, up until then, they had a tradition on Saturdays. Saturdays was were meetings and a walkthrough to get ready for the game, right? And then it was a home game. They'd head downtown to the Hilton where they stayed, and then if it was on the road, we'd get on the bus, go to the airport, and take the charter. Well, part of the tradition was before the meeting start, the rookies had to bring in donuts for everybody. Mm-hmm. And so there are boxes and boxes and boxes of donuts. So it's Rusty's first year here. He doesn't know anything about this. Players do. So the players are telling the rookie, you got to bring in the donuts, And so they bring in all these donuts, and Rusty walks in and he sees it. This is for the first game. He ballistic. Threw it all off the table, made a huge mess, threw the stuff. He goes, what the fuck are you guys doing? He says, you work your ass off all week so you can be ready for tomorrow's game, and you're going to ruin it in an hour?
Wow, how about that? I love it.
With all that fat sugar and stuff.
Uh-huh.
And from that day forward, you never saw a donut in there again.
Love it. Love it. That is the way to do it. I'm a big believer in that the fuel you are ingesting is going to have a big effect on how you perform on the football field.
It's another thing, like you see hamstrings.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned Rusty a lot because, number one, he's a friend, but I've known him since he went to Buffalo, and he went to Buffalo in the early 80s. So he just retired. He spent a long time in the league, but he just, he's just so good at getting people prepared. And, you learn so much from him that it's just, and the knowledge that he passes on to the players, is amazing. And it's like, when you're looking at guys for the draft, we always brought Rusty up, and they do the bod pod that they do here. They do that at the combine, and it was because of Rusty we got the bod pod here. And Rusty was real big, so if we draft a guy and he was, let's say it was a linebacker and he was 17% body fat, and he wants that guy more like 12 or 13%. So Rusty's going to say, well, this is what I can do to have him lose that fat and gain muscle weight, etc. How fast he can gain the muscle weight, how soon, because Rusty is of the opinion that you only can put on like 7 good pounds a year. Yeah, you can gain 20, but about 8 of it's going to be good.
I've never heard that before. That's interesting. Let me get to Jaylon Johnson here. He was asked about being a leader now that he signed this big contract, and he added what he wants to improve on as a leader.
I feel like it's about action. I feel like you said, from day one, I feel like I've done things the right way. Even with the old regime, I came in, made plays, came in and took that role over after Kyle Fuller left my first year, going into my second year, coming in, having the new regime, adjusting, adapting, stepping up, still continuing to make plays at a high level. I feel like for me, it's carrying guys along to do the things that I've been fortunate enough and blessed enough to do. And I feel like for me, I got to push myself to be a more vocal leader, to be able to go out of my comfort zone and even push people out of their comfort zone to continue to be better, continue to better themselves, because I know I can't do it on my own. I feel like it takes everybody, and it takes me having to be uncomfortable as a leader to be able to push those around me. I got to talk to the group more. I got to talk to the team, the unit, more so than just kind of talking to Tariq, or more so talking to just Jaquan on like in different settings. I feel like more so the group has to hear my voice. So I feel like that's something that I'm looking forward to doing, allowing the group to feel my energy, allowing the group to feel where I'm coming from when I'm speaking and seeing things that I see, just being more vocal in a group setting.
Greg, do you think it's necessary for a team to teach players how to lead?
That was some interesting comments that he made. Part of that, I think, was knowing himself and maturing as a person, and then being comfortable with himself. And he talked about some of the issues that he had last year. Remember when he signed the extension, or last year during the season, he brought up some stuff that was going wrong in his life. Not everybody can be a leader, and I think a lot of it is innate. It's like instincts. You have it or you don't have it. Some people have it and they don't realize they have it. Mm-hmm. And they got to be pushed along the way. Haven't been around him enough to really know, but to me, he seemed more example type and semi-vocal with the guys in his room, the cornerback room. But now he feels, hey, I'm making a lot of money. He feels himself that I got to be vocal defensive side of the ball. And I think that's a maturity level with him. Again, feeling comfortable that he can be the person to do it. Now, like Tremaine Edmonds was known as a leader in Buffalo. TJ Edwards was known as a leader in Philadelphia. They came here with those skills, but they being the new kids on the block last year, how much did they get involved in that? I don't know the answer to that. But now that they've been here a year, I think you're going to see they'll take over things more than they were a year ago.
Yeah, interesting. One of the things that has always bugged me, even when I was a kid and playing, little league baseball and sandlot football, it's some people want to be leaders just simply because they want to hear themselves talk. And have you come across that in the NFL? And if so, how do coaches deal with that? It's basically telling people, please shut the F up, because what you're saying is gobbledygook. Nobody wants to hear it. Just go out there. I don't know how you handle that.
A pseudo or a fake leader?
Yeah, exactly. Creating more problems.
Although you can't fool the players. They know who you are, and they know what you are. So if you're trying to be something that you aren't, you're not gaining any respect. If anything, you're losing respect.
That's good. I hope the Bears don't have that problem. And it seems like I would love for the team to, these guys that Eberflus has targeted as leading from the front. I would love it if they were ensuring that they're leading in a quality manner. And there are just certain things, I think Poles talked a little bit about a book that was written by an admiral. I forgot the name of the book, something about.
He pointed out in the presser, and he had his staff. He wanted his staff to read it.
Yeah.
During their off time, and because he got a lot out of the book, so he was hoping that if he got a lot out of it, they might get a lot out of it.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting is that football front office people and football coaches often use military leaders as example setters.
You think that's a good idea?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's football's a very physical game. It's a battle.
Mm-hmm. Apparently, Eberflus is at the podium. Let's just get a taste of what he is talking about here.
Okay.
Go through,
Oops.
let it go through the process. I told you, make the team or you make your position impact. Those are the things that we evaluate. It's hard to evaluate, guys when we're out here and not in pads. The pass protection's hard. The pass rush is hard to really evaluate if a guy really can bore around the corner or if he really can protect, against the bull rush, because we put limits on the guys a little bit what they can and cannot do, so we don't have injury when we're in shells like that. So you have to, because everybody's got to stay on their feet. But once we get pads on, they got to stay on their feet. But then they're able to bowl and do different things, and O-line can do their snatch and all that stuff. So it's something that's very detailed out, and it's really because of injury. But to answer your question, we're going to let that play out.
Do you have updates on Noah Sewell and Sybil Webster?
Yeah, they'll be day to day. It's nothing major, and they'll be back. It's kind of like a little bit like TJ and those guys were. We'll see how it goes, and we'll do what we always do. We'll start putting them in individual, and then we'll ramp up the reps and all that, and go from there.
All right. Well, we saw DeMarcus Walker kick inside in the 2-minute drill. How does that benefit the pass?
Interesting.
Situations?
Yeah, I think it's always good. He's an effective guy in there, and he can go in and go out. So when you have that versatility, you can match him up on different people. Some guys you can't do that. Some guys aren't very good when they go in there, and you can't match them up, which is always good if you get a long player in there like a Dexter against a guard or a center. That's always a good matchup.
How's the cadence issue with Caleb right now?
Good. Yeah, it came back way better, and in terms of just the operation of it, and it's improving every day.
You feel resolved? That's resolved. You guys have a game next week, obviously.
Well, I mean, you're always going to enhance your cadence and change the cadence. So we have to go through the process of that. You got to use different cadences, and it's got to use it as a weapon, and that takes time. And we're going through the process right now. We're not even close to being through that process.
Interesting. Greg, do you think that Eberflus is doing a better job? Let me kill that audio. Okay. You think Eberflus is doing a better job at the podium, or does it matter at all how he interacts with the Chicago media?
I think he's doing a lot better job. Part of it, he's more comfortable. Have you noticed last couple, now we only heard a snippet of what he said today, but his favorite word I haven't heard in the last few pressers, exciting. It's like, we're excited about this. We're excited about this. It's like, get it out of your dialogue. But, they had supposedly hired a guy last spring to coach these guys.
Help with that, right?
Yeah. And so that should help. I think he's more confident. It's his third year. He should be, and it's not an easy thing getting up in front of those people, but he's more at ease. You're a rookie head coach, you're a little uptight with what and saying the right thing, etc. But the more, it's like anything else, you get experience, it becomes easier to do. It's like you and me talking. The first couple shows were horse shit 4 years ago.
Yeah. It was my fault. Badass.
I didn't hear, what was Courtney's question? I heard his answer. I didn't hear her question.
About DeMarcus Walker was playing in the defensive tackle during the 2-minute drill. Is that something we might be seeing?
That's one of the reasons they signed him, because he can play inside and outside.
Yeah, right. And I think he played inside last season, so it's not complete.
Yeah, I mean, they signed him to be a defensive end, but when he was at Tennessee, he was like a 5 technique. Which is really, when you translate a 5 technique to this scheme, it's a defensive tackle, not a defensive end.
Okay. It's not the 3 tech, but the 5 tech.
Me, brother.
Yeah, I do that from time to time.
There you go.
By the way, Badass found the title of the book. It's The Wisdom of the Bullfrog by Admiral McRaven. I'll look for that and see if I can learn anything about being a leader here at the bar room. So anything else regarding leadership? Like you had to be a leader in the with all of your college scouts. Did you empower them? Did you talk to them about being leaders of themselves, or was you just assumed that was your responsibility and that you didn't want them to worry about that, just worry about providing great scouting reports?
Well, their job wasn't to lead the group. Okay, their job was to, I'll tell you what we did though, which helped them. We said, in essence, our guys had an area and they never left that area. There's some teams that they put a guy in an area and then midway through the season, he goes into somebody else's area on a cross check or whatever. Our guys didn't do that. So they stayed in their own area the whole year. They did their cross checks after the season strictly on tape. And we told them that they were, in essence, the personnel director of their area. So what they said about the players in their area was gospel. They had to know that they were responsible for that. They were going to be held accountable for that.
That's fantastic.
So that becomes, I don't know if you want to say leadership, but work ethic, responsibility, knowing what's expected of you and doing it. And they did a great job. We had the smallest group in the league, and I'll say right now, still think we had one of the best.
Do you? That's interesting. Was that a budget issue regarding the size of your staff back then?
No, it was a lot of it had to do with how Jerry wanted that done. And so, but we had good people. If you didn't have good people, you couldn't do it. Who replaces Jerry? Phil Emery does. Right away, he tells Ted, I got to have like 4 more scouts. Well, 4 more scouts doesn't necessarily help your department. It's the quality of the people that you have.
Indeed, yeah.
Okay, so they got a huge department now as compared to what we had. But when you look at the title, they got a lot of chiefs, and I'm not criticizing it, but in order to accumulate quality people like Ryan Poles has under him, you got to give them those titles and you got to pay them. Because if you aren't, somebody else will. And so we did, just by looking at what some of the guys have done or are doing now in the league that worked for us, it speaks for itself how good our department was. And then when you look at, we drafted 12 guys who ended up in the Pro Bowl. We did a good job. We got to the playoffs a lot. We got to a Super Bowl. So, but our group was a hardworking group. And I'll be on my deathbed and I'll be appreciative of those guys because they worked really hard and they're all very, very good at what they did.
Fantastic. It had to be rewarding working with those guys.
Yep.
Matt Nagy,
really good people. All of them, I consider all of them good friends right now. I talk to Teddy Monago at least once a week, every week.
I love it.
He's with the Rams. He just, if he doesn't call me, I call him, and we always touch base.
Has he shared anything interesting regarding Gerald Everett or the center Shelton?
Yeah, he likes them both. He said, Shelton came in, he was raw, but he ended up being the better guy. They had the other guy who was in front of him, who was a local kid from down in Hinsdale area. And the Bears had tried to sign him a few years ago, and he re-signed with the Rams, and Shelton ended up beating that guy out. I can't remember what his name is, and he's out of the league now. Then he said with Everett, he said, real talented guy, good pass catcher, runs well. The catch, he goes, he'll have a brain fart every once in a while, but other than that, he goes, really good football player.
Good to hear. Excellent to hear. Regarding that center position at today's press conference, Matt Nagy said that the selection of the starting center. Did I do it again? That's the second time. Matt Eberflus. I need to get better night's sleep on Sunday nights. Matt Eberflus said that they were going to let that process just play out. They don't have a timeline as to when they're going to announce the center. They're just going to let it play out. And that seems to be, probably the best way. I hate it when they anoint someone based on salary like that. Eberflus will not do that. They'll let it play out. So
I know one thing. It's not going to play out this week because they're not going to hit each other until Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, in saying that, you notice, like everybody saw that film clip, Caleb threw a deep ball to Tyler Scott, and he was immediately tackled. And the difference between now and, say, OTAs and minicamp is that you're not allowed to touch anybody in those practices by league rule. Now, yeah, you have some, but theoretically it's hands off. Here, you don't have pads on, but even though they're playing without pads, they do have shells, and it could be they're like pseudo shoulder pad type things. So it just protects the shoulders, but it's not a shoulder pad. There is some contact, and there's contact on every play. It's just not all out contact.
Zach Pearson is reporting that at practice today, defensively, there was a team period in which the Bears defense was the clear winner. They had back-to-back plays in which Montez Sweat created pressure, felt like the defense could have been rewarded with a back on a few of those plays. It's typical, of course, early in camp for the defense to have the lead.
Always.
Yeah, always. And
always, and you've got some new players on offense, and especially a rookie quarterback. And none of that. For some reason, the media tries to make big deal out of that. When you're inside the building, you could care less. You're looking for continuity and growth and improvement from day to day. And yeah, there's going to be some plays that are some bad plays. And so what? But in the course of that play, there might be 5 or 6 guys that play really well, do everything really right. Because when you're looking at the tape, you're looking at every single player. You're going to replay that tape back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So you're grading each player on each snap, whether it's 7-on-7, 11-on-11, or 1-on-1s.
Dan Wiederer is reporting and is often criticized by Bears fans for his negative approach. He tweeted out, Caleb Williams still has a long way to become a top-tier NFL quarterback, but man, oh man, some of the quarterback feel stuff he shows, yep, it's in there. Special is inside of him. So that's good to news when negative Nancy, Dan Wader is reporting good stuff about the quarterback as opposed to
the third practice.
Yeah, third practice. Yeah.
He ain't going to the Pro Bowl based off of 3 practices.
No,
it's like we said at the beginning. Let's let them grow the way they're supposed to grow, and you don't. Yeah, you'd love it to happen overnight. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and
don't forget they overload these guys early on in camp from the mental standpoint. And then, so you're loading stuff. You're in your meetings the day before, you're putting in new stuff day after day after day after day. And these guys got to, their minds are going crazy, and they're going to make mistakes on the field. That's part of the process. It's part of learning.
Indeed. There's an unconfirmed report that the Bears are going to allow Jonathan Owens, the safety they acquired from Green Bay, and is married to Simone Biles, the Olympic gymnast, incredible gymnast, that they may allow him to go to Paris to support his wife. So he probably will, if this report is accurate, he will miss several days of camp. Do you support a move like that?
Yeah, I think he's had the whole off-season program here. He's going to have, I don't know when gymnastics start. The Olympics start the 26th, but you'd have to look and see what days gymnastics actually start. And gymnastics is probably a 5 or 6 day run in the Olympics. But when, I don't know, you'd have to look at the Olympic schedule. He may end up, one of them might be the Hall of Fame game for all I know. But that came out, I got it about 2 weeks ago. That original report came out, and I see really nothing wrong with it. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. It's not quite the birth of a kid, but it's your wife competing in the largest sporting event in the world, and she's the best in the world.
Yeah. And she's been very supportive of him in his football career, and would tweet often about his play back when he was with the Packers, and she will certainly be doing that with him as a Bear. So it seems like a good quid pro quo to allow them to, support each other as long as he doesn't miss too much camp. I've asked people for some questions, and some of them are coming in now. Question for Greg: does TJ Edwards' play on the field look any different than that from Lance Briggs? That's an interesting question, because that is a good comp.
I think they're very similar. I think they're very, very similar. You look at size, speed, overall athleticism, they're real close. And then the key ingredient, instincts. Lance didn't time that well. He was 4.78. I've told the story. Lovey comes in, and I had the cards of each player on my board in my office. It was like to the left of my desk. And so Lovey's looking at the cards, and he's going through the defense. He's only here a few days. And he sees, and Jerry's in there too, and he sees 4.78 for Lance Briggs. And, he doesn't know Lance as a player. So this is 2004. And Lance was going into his second year then. We can't have that. That's 4.78. That's too slow, and so we had to Lovey throw it out. He plays 4.55. It's his instincts are rare. Well, that's the same with TJ Edwards. TJ Edwards is a 4.78, 4.79 guy who never going to time good, but plays fast because of his instincts. They're great instincts.
Yeah, he's a great signing by Ryan Poles. By the way, Berlissimo says the gymnastics dates are the 27th to the 30th of July. So if that's the case, he probably missed 4 or 5 days. That's not too bad. Thank you.
Well, you got to get over there and come back.
That's that could be the biggest.
I thought it was more than 4 days. I thought it was 5, but he Verissimo probably got it right off the schedule. Because there's the individual stuff, and there's the all around, and then there's like the finals. Maybe they do it in 4, but it gets a lot of TV time. I know that.
Oh yeah. Greg, some are downplaying how good the Bears secondary is. J2K believes they're top 5. Is that too optimistic?
No. You've got, Stevenson. We all know he started slow last year, and as it really should be, he was a rookie. And one of the reasons he started slow was people weren't throwing on Jaylon, because it's tough to throw on Jaylon. So who are they going to throw on? They're going to throw on Tyreek.
Yep.
And so, I think when you look at his tackles were like double what Jalen's was, something like that, because he was getting a hell of a lot more opportunities that are thrown his way. But then you look at how he played the second half of the season. He got all 4 interceptions. He was always physical, but he wasn't always hitting at the right time. He had some penalties and stuff. And so he curtailed that in that second half of the season. I think with Kevin coming in at the one safety position with Brisker, they're strong. Their 5 is really, really good. And I think, you go to the backups. Owens has started a number of games in the league as a backup safety. And then, there's a bunch of corners that have started a bunch of leagues. There's a lot of depth on this defensive backfield. It's probably overall the strongest group top to bottom. People say the wide receiver group. Well, the wide receiver is top heavy. After the top three, some question marks, and you're hoping, like Tyler Scott looked good so far. The other guys haven't really taken the bull by the horn, so to speak, and they got to step up this year in camp. So, yeah, I think the secondary is really, and the linebacker group is really good.
Mm-hmm. Scottish Bear reminds us that Terrell Smith, who he thinks is grossly underrated, was challenging Tyreek Stevenson until he contacted. Yeah,
good
man,
football player.
Really impressive draft pick. All right, let's get to some more questions here. Levante Rogers wants to know, to complete this defense, what is more important, a defensive end or a defensive tackle?
Defensive end. They got 3 pretty good tackles.
Yeah. And your expectations for Zach Pickens this year. I saw a question here. Let me see if I can find. Oh, here it is, J2K. Greg, everyone is talking about the body transformation Dexter has done, but I'm hearing Zach Pickens has dropped a lot of fat and built up his muscle. Have you seen or heard anything about Zach Pickens' body transformation?
We talked about this a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And we said just that. You're hearing everything about Dexter. Nobody said boo about Pickens.
I remember that, yes.
and Dexter, granted, he's got a little bit of that outgoing personality, and he puts a lot of stuff on social media where I don't think Pickens does that. Yeah, it'll be interesting because he's got a boatload of talent now.
Mm-hmm.
And I like Pickens better than Gervon in college. Technically, he's rated as a 3rd rounder, but he was the 64th pick. And in every other draft, the 64th pick is a 2nd-round pick. Because there was one team had lost their 2nd-round pick. But, athletically, he's rare. And he can play both the 1 and the 3 technique. Yeah, I'm expecting big things from him. I'm excited to see what he does. I'm using Flus's favorite word that he doesn't use anymore.
Thank you. Let's get rid of that word from the Coach Eberflus's vocabulary and let Greg own it.
Don't use it for describing everything.
Everything, exactly. We're excited about this. We're excited. Yeah, come on. That's just, you got to get rid of that. All right.
We're enthused. Find another adjective.
Arnie Lindbergh asks, are there any NFL rooms to worry about with Karan being on the NFL list during preseason?
No, he can come off anytime.
Yeah. He probably will be in about a week is my guess. But
I don't know. I mean, they thought he'd be ready for camp. He's not.
Yeah.
For the start of camp, he's not. He's had surgery, which means he's been the surgery. They are not going to put him in position where I think I mentioned this last week. You don't draft him just for this year. You're drafting him for a career. And you're not going to curtail that to try to put him in harm's way when he's not ready to go. Okay. Guy went to Yale. He's a quick learner. He's getting all the mental reps. He's not getting the physical reps. Now, the good news is he hasn't they're not doing any hitting yet, but at the same time, once he gets taken off of NFI, he has to go through that ramp up period. That's league rules now.
Right.
I'm sure he's doing stuff on his own on the side. That's part of the rehab process. But when he's ready to go, he'll go. And if he's not ready to go by, say, after 2 preseason games, then you might see his rookie year be a wash. And people will question that. And it might, I think they're planning on him playing as a solid backup, maybe between backup left tackle, backup left guard type thing. So that could curtail that, and that would be, that'd be a negative. But I don't want to get ahead of ourselves because we don't know. Because we don't.
Right.
By league rule, you don't have to say anything about injuries during the preseason.
Mm-hmm.
And now we came in. Flus was talking about somebody that had some little nick when we first turned on that presser, but I don't know who he was talking about.
Yeah, he was talking about the guys who have not practiced yet. One of the defensive linemen, Cromer.
But Cromer was taken off of NFI after 1 day.
Yeah. So I basically, he said, those guys are going to be back soon, so it's not a concern. The team is fairly healthy, and that's really good news. Levante wants to know, what will it take for the Bears to become a legit top 5 defense all season long?
Stop teams in the fourth quarter.
There you go. Stay healthy. Stop teams in the fourth quarter and find the pass rush, right? Because that'll get you turnovers.
I mean, they created a fairly good number of turnovers last year. I'll create even more.
Mm-hmm.
We used to practice creating turnovers with Lovey. It was an everyday, every period thing. It was ingrained in the defensive players. You could be doing 7-on-7. You could be doing walkthrough, and the defensive players would be grabbing at the ball all the time. And that helps your offense too, because it makes them concentrate on protecting the ball.
Indeed. Bellissimo wants to know who's going to get more sacks, Austin Booker or DeMarcus Walker?
Oh, Booker's a more natural pass rusher than Walker will ever be.
Yeah.
But it's going to be, who do they trust to play?
Yeah. His bold take is Booker gets more sacks than Walker. Scottish Bear, speaking about Flus's newfound confidence with the media, he wasn't confident even in the the last season. It's a different story now. That haircut and that beard has given him vocal confidence, is what I'm going to call it. Here's a tough question for you from Badass Warthog. Who do you prefer, Eric Clapton or B.B. King?
Eric, without a question. I like B.B., but B.B.'s no Eric.
Yeah.
Can't play like Eric. How about, I've seen B.B. live a couple times, and I've never seen B.B. play a chord. He plays lead, and he sings, but he never sits and plays chords.
Interesting. You are quite the music lover. Drums and guitars seem to be your specialty, for lack of a better word.
I don't know about drums. I like good drummers when I see them.
Okay. Scottish Bear, back to football, says, I was an advocate of Larry Borom to get cut. I am not sure this will be the case now. With Braxton being nicked up, it's been Larry Borom at left tackle, and Amagadeji is still on that injury report.
Yeah, and that's a valid point, but we're still, what's today? July 22nd, and when's the season start?
September 8th. Yeah. 8 or 9. Yeah.
There's a long, long way to go. I wrote about that as it's the guys on the bubble on offense, and I had Larry Borom as one of them. I don't think Larry Borom is very good on the left side. Now, he may have even gotten his body better. There was a transformation between year 1 and year 2. I didn't necessarily to year 3, but maybe you saw it again more this year. But the big thing with Borom is that because of the playtime incentives he got that were built into the CBA, because he played a lot of his first 2 years, he is making, now here's the comparison. Borom and the running back Khalil Herbert were like taking a round apart, maybe you're in the same round. Khalil Herbert didn't get those playtime incentives that Borom got. Khalil Herbert is making $1.2 million this year, and Borom's making $3.1. And so, because he got there and he earned it, he got the play time, his salary jumped up. So now, outside of either Bates or Coleman, depending on which one starts, he's the highest paid reserve on the offensive line. And are you going to pay him, who's a tackle only, $3 million to be a backup? I just don't see that happening. Could it? Yeah, obviously anything can happen. I just don't see it in the cards. The way you try to team build and put together and build, have your salary cap adjusted a certain way. Now you can cut him and re-sign him and get him down to, like some of these veterans they signed who were played more than he has.
Right.
They're making 1.1, 1.2, which is where he should be playing, but because of the rules the way they are, he's making over 3.
What do you think about what Berlissimo says? He says everyone has brought into this narrative that Borum can't play. Borum hasn't practiced in a consistent spot and can play both sides at a pinch. He's a very athletic tackle now.
Well, I disagree that he's athletic. I do not think he's very athletic. And I think he really struggles on the left side. Can he get you out of a game? Yes. Mm-hmm. Can he get you out, his quarterback killed? There's a chance of that's going to happen too. I trust him on the right side because you're not going against speed the way you are on the left side. But, Braxton had a little dinger coming out. They did work out on his own. He's out there every day. They're just limiting the reps he gets right now because they don't need to push him right now. When they start going heavier, Braxton's going to be there.
Right. All right. Let's get one more question in here. Berlissimo wants to know, Kendrick or Drake? Those are 2 rappers, if you don't know. You listen to rap music? Those are 2 rappers, 2 hip hop.
I'm not a rap fan. I couldn't tell you.
You haven't been following.
I couldn't tell you who's who.
I know them well because they're part of pop culture now. But if you played a Drake song for me, what a song I said, is this Kendrick or Drake singing this? I'd have a 50-50 shot. That's about it. I couldn't say with any great authority. All right. So this week you are not on with Swifty on Friday, but you will be next week. So we'll get to see you before your next appearance on Swifty. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, I can't wait. Probably Tuesday next week, we're thinking.
Yep. So that'll be probably the last day of practice. There'll be just a walkthrough and fly to Canton on Wednesday, and the game is Thursday.
By the way, I saw you on Friday night in Chicago, or football night in Chicago with Lawrence Holmes. He was asking you questions about.
Yeah, that was taped a few weeks ago. Did they replay that or something?
Yeah, they replayed it. Yeah, it was funny because I was thinking, haven't I seen this before?
Yeah, that was like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, so they owe you another check.
They didn't pay me for that one.
All right, everybody. I want to thank everyone who joined us live. Great questions, and we will see you back here next week on Tuesday. Gabriel Talks Football. We got more programming. Best way to stay on top of it is to subscribe. Subscribe to the Barroom Network, and you'll get up all the time about what's going on. Greg, Gabriel, you are the absolute best, and we'll see you next time. Take care, brother.
See you later. Thank you.